acknowledge our university and community sponsors, the University of Iowa's International Programs and the University of Iowa's Honors Program. They contribute vital time, talent, and logistics to our organization. I also thank the Stanley U of I Foundation Support Organization for their financial support. And I thank today's special financial sponsors, Midwest One Bank and Mike Margolin. Our programs are made possible by the financial support of these sponsors. Now, I am very pleased to introduce Victoria Morozov. Victoria Morozov is the founder and director of the Moldova Project, a charitable trust organization that reaches out to Moldova's underprivileged and abused youth and offers resources and opportunities. Victoria has devoted her life to advocacy for the poor and serves as liaison to a number of United Kingdom-based groups, helping to unify sustainable initiatives for the Moldova Project and to create partnerships with local authorities and government ministries. Victoria has hosted more than 800 international volunteers, and she told me a few minutes ago, most of those in her home, so she has gotten quite close to many of them, and working to implement 14 individual projects focused on medical and structural support for poor families and social orphans. She is the coordinator for 5 annual award ceremonies aimed at giving recognition to the most dedicated and exemplary volunteers in Moldova. In 2013, the Moldovan Ministry of Youth recognized her outstanding work on behalf of children and families. Please join me in welcoming Victoria Morozov.
Thank you very much for this very nice introduction. I'm very pleased to be able to come here today and to tell you a little bit about my country. Moldova is my country and is the most dearest place for me because this is where I was born, is my family and my friends. But for other people, this is a country where there's lots of unhappy people, and not because it's a wrong place. It's just lots of bad things happening that are caused by politicians and is not people's fault. So I'm gonna start. But before starting, I would like to ask you, have someone have been in Moldova before? No. Have you heard about Moldova? Okay, that's a good start then. And right from the beginning, I would like to apologize for my accent. I've never learned English in my life. I've just learned it by myself through books, films, and the internet. So I've never had any classes, and I'm trying to do my best with what I can. Okay, so Moldova. Moldova is a very little country. It's a place in Eastern Europe, and it's between Romania and Ukraine. It's a very little country, and it's mostly a landscape. Our capital is called Chisinau, and it has more than 1 million citizens in it, so it's not very big. We are a parliamentary republic, and right now we have a very, very unstable political situation. But just a little bit about our flag. It's very similar to Romanians, and you can see it in there as well. The only difference is the eagle in the middle. Just a little bit about our demographics. The total population of Moldova is about 3 million people. It's about 500,000 less than it used to be 10 years ago, due to many reasons. First of all, it's because of immigration. Lots of people decided in the last couple of years, maybe 10 years, to leave the country because of the political and the financial situation within the country, but also because life expectancy it's shorter. Lots of people pass away earlier than used to be before, so we have a little bit less number of the population. And also, after the Soviet Union collapsed, lots of people changed their living places, so they moved from rural areas to urban areas because there was no jobs, so people had to move. That's why about half of population live in urban areas, which used not to be like this in Soviet Union because lots of jobs would be mostly in the villages. About ethnicity, so about 60% of the population will call themselves Moldavians. Others would be Romanians, just 23%, and others are just Ukrainians, Russians, Gagauz, and Bulgarians. So it's not very big ethnicity, but still. Religion. So about 93%, I would say a little bit more, about 94% of the populations are Christian Orthodox, which is pretty bad for us, I would say, because as you know, in general, religions in different countries have very big impacts on living of the people, especially Orthodox churches, because they're Russian churches, and they control population, and they're trying to teach people how to live or to give them some ideas through the churches. So they're using these churches to make people have different beliefs than they should. The rest are just little numbers of people that are Protestants or atheists, or they are in different religions. Just a little bit about the fertility. So in 2015, for each woman would be about 1.5 children per woman. Again, this number is smaller because I think due to the poverty, because Moldova is considered one of the poorest countries in Europe, people can't really afford to have the kids. So they would choose to have less kids than used to be before. And actually the first birth would be when women would be about 24 years old, which is a little bit older than it used to be a couple of years ago, because I think people now changed a little bit their life, and they're trying to get a job first and then have their first child. Even though before it was a little bit different, but because education was not very important, at least in Soviet Union. But this changed, which is good. But again, people prefer to have their kids a little bit earlier, because life expectancy, again, it's not so long. So it's about 65 for men and 70 for women. That's why they prefer having their kids a little bit earlier. Just about our administrative divisions. So Moldova is divided in 33 districts, which we call raions, 3 municipalities and 2 autonomous regions, which is Gagauzia and Transnistria. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Transnistria. You can see Gagauzia, it's yellow, and then Transnistria is orange. Because Transnistria is a very similar situation that happens now with Ukraine. As you all know, there is a war. And actually, why they have a war is because Russians said that they're coming to protect their citizens because they feel they're not safe in Ukraine. This is what happened exactly the same in Transnistria. The Russians, and we call them separatists, they came into this territory and they said that they feel that they have to protect their citizens. So they started a war in 1992. Actually, I was born and my family is in Transnistria, so I can tell you a little bit more about this part of Moldova. So it's an autonomous republic, which means they have a different government, different laws, different money, even different currency, which they call rubles. So it's not Russian rubles, but it's still rubles. And they can't be changed anywhere else in the world, only in Transnistria. And even you have to have a passport, a different passport in Transnistria to be able to live there. So, and it's like a Soviet Union passport with this white and black picture. And I'm sorry I didn't take it with me. I would like to show it to you. But then you have to change it every 10 years and put another white and black picture. But anyway, in 92, we had a war there. But what means a war? A war is something that gives to some people power and lots of money. But is something that brings to the other people lots of unhappiness. Because in the wars, you lose your families, you lose your houses, you lose everything that you've done in your life. This is what happened, for example, with my family. I lost my dad in the Transnistrian war when he was just walking back home from work. And I remember myself after this war and my friends that were the same age as me, that we couldn't understand what's happening and why this happens to us and why it's so much unhappiness around us when people are just, they were living peacefully and just one day we wake up and there was a war and tanks and everything. So from a peaceful place, we woke up one day in a very scary place that brought lots of bad memories. But what's Transnistria now? Actually, it's a place where people, where Russians still have this autonomy, and this is where they produce guns. and their weapons for the wars, and this is where they have their 13 illegal army. So they can have everything they need in this little territory that they can use, for example, now in their war with Ukraine. These are the biggest cities in Transnistria, Comrat and Tiraspol. That's how they look like, nothing specifically. Just a little bit about our currency. So it's called Moldavian lei. This is how they look like. $1 is about 20 lei. And actually, GDP by sector now first is on services, then industry, and then agriculture. Even though in Soviet Union and before Soviet Union, it used to be more on industry and agriculture and then services. But when Soviet Union collapsed, it had to change, so people could earn some money and have some incomes. Just a little bit about the history of Moldova so you can understand how things changed through the years and why. So in antiquity, Moldova was inhabited by Dacian tribes, but between the 1st and 7th centuries, we was under the Roman and Byzantine empires. But then because Moldova is just in the middle of, from Asia to Europe, it was very well-known territory, and people wanted to get that place. So lots of different nations invaded the territory, but you can see this on the maps. It changed through the years, but still lots of people invaded that. There is a grammatical mistake, and holy I wanted to say, but so Stefan the Great, he was one of the princes that was very victorious in back in 1457 and 04, because the history says that he won 46 battles from 48 under Ottomans. So our main street is called Stefan the Great, and then if you would go in Romania, everyone knows, and all the books starts with this picture, and everyone knows him as one of the best and victorious prince in Moldova. But then after the Russian-Turkish War, the Russian Empire annexed the eastern half of Principality of Moldova, and they called it Bessarabia. And then, except Transnistria, the part that I showed you a little bit before. But then, after the Second War finished in 45, Bessarabia returns under Soviet occupation. So until 1981, we was subordinated to Russia, and we was part of Soviet Union. And again, what Soviet Union? I'm sure lots of you know what is this system, but this system is a controlled system that doesn't give to the people freedom to speak, to create, to feel a personality in a country. This was a part of, this was times when some people like my mom, her generation, think it was good because there was no hungry people. Everyone would have jobs. Everyone would have the main things that they needed. But in the same time, I remember myself, we had to stay in lines for months until we would get a furniture or a new chair. And then when you get it, because people had money to buy all of these things, but then when you get it, it was the same like your neighbors. We had all the same clothes. We had all the same gray clothes. And we had the same shoes and the same furniture. And if you will go in Moldova, the older generations, you'll see about the same furniture. People have the same things. And you wanted to get things, there was nothing to get. So why you would work and have incomes when you have nothing to get? I remember when we went to the shop, it was allowed, like for the family, to have only 2 breads. So you wasn't allowed to buy more than they think you need to get. It wasn't freedom. When people wanted to say something, they would be deported in Russia and Siberia. And no one will ever find them. So for us, for younger generations, this is a very bad system that I'm happy it collapsed. But people like my mom, they think it was controlled and it was okay. But anyway, 90s was very good period for Moldova because this is when we became a democratic country. This is when it happened, dissolution from Soviet Union. And it was very good. Our first president was Mircea Snegur. And at that times, it seemed like the best things happened to Moldova. We are free now, and we are free to tell anyone what we think, that we are personalities, and we are allowed to say our thoughts. But actually, when Soviet Union collapsed, it was very, very difficult to switch from planned market to an economy one. People was terrified. They didn't know what to do because we had this kolkhoz that is organized places where people would go in the land all together, will work. They'll have all the same incomes. They'll just go and work for the government. And everything would go to the state, to the richer people, make them richer. But other people would be just simple people. But then when it collapsed, people didn't know what to do with their lives, didn't know how to sell their things. Even if they would make their own vegetables, like they would grow them in the gardens, they didn't know what to do with them. To sell to whom? To Russia? Russia didn't want them anymore because we were not part of Soviet Union. So 90s was really, really difficult times for Moldova. And this is when lots of really bad and difficult things happened to it. I'll just go a little bit through different slides, but I'm not going to read them, so if you can just look through them. But 90s and until 2000s, because of economy suffered so much, most of the population was living below the poverty line. So, and the World Development Report in 2003 said that about 40% of the population was living on less than $2 per day. And then the other 40% would be maybe $4 per day. So it was lots of poverty, and this is when immigration started to be on a very high levels. People would live anywhere just to make some money because there was nothing to do in Moldova. It was just all the factories, everything, industry, everything was closed. Even the cultural houses, cinematography, everything was closed. The people didn't know how to get through this system. That's why lots of people seemed like they wanted to leave the country. And it's good. People left. They could learn different cultures, bring different experiences back home. But the problem was that they left in the countries where they was working illegally and they was working in the black market. And this is what was bad about that, because they would not go through the custom and just show their passport and go somewhere else. They would have to make fake passports with heavy money, own lots of money from different people, and they would get in lots of very big troubles. So, but in the same time, people still left because there was nothing else to do, and which means that about 38% of Moldova's GDP was actually from the remittances that people would send from outside of the country, which was like the second after Tajikistan. And you would not believe it's like that because Tajikistan seems to be much, much poorer country. And the annual salary in Moldova was about $2,160 per year. This is how much maximum people would get. And this was very difficult years for Moldova, especially for their families and their kids, because this is when, and even the National Bureau of Statistics showed that about 25,000 of Moldavians were victims of human trafficking. And of course, 40% was, from that number was kids, because this is an easy target, because lots of people, when they left, they would not be able to take their kids, they would leave them somewhere. Leave them in institutions, but then institutions were corrupted and there was lots of things happened that probably I should not speak about them, but it was bad things happening. And it's a shame that it was on the kids and their moms, because they are the most vulnerable parts of one society when bad things happen. And the government should protect them rather than what happened in Moldova. And actually, Moldova was one of the top 3 suppliers of in the black market for organs. And actually, UNICEF showed that about 90% of Moldavians young generations, which is the future of a country, they wanted to leave the country. And you know what? This number is still specific for these times. People want to leave the country, unfortunately. But again, NGOs like my organization or other organizations, they can make very little changes in a country with so many problems. This is the government who has to make the biggest changes. And actually, we had 8 years of communism because after the democracy, when everything fall down, people was scared and they thought, if we bring back the Communist Party, maybe it will be the same. Maybe we'll have the same good life like in Soviet Union, and there won't be starving people. Kids won't be in the streets because thousands of kids was in the streets during that times. So we brought back the communism for 8 years. 8 years of bad times. And then when in 2009 we had again elections, they won, but they stole the elections. So thousands of people came on the streets, they was protesting, they even tried to burn down the parliament. And the Communist Party gave up, and we have elections again. And actually we had other parties that said they are democratic, they will help people and they will be working for the people. They came in Moldova and they disappointed us again, because 7 years after 8 years of communism, it's even worse than it was during the communism. Because at least during the communism years, they would control everything. They would control the crimes. There was crimes, but they would control them, everything under themselves. But then when this democracy came, everyone would do everything they wanted just to protect their businesses. Because what's a business? It's an income, it's money, and what's money? Money is power. If you have money, you can buy anyone and sell anyone in the country. So during these 7 years of democracy, that was tough times for the people. And again, number of people that wanted to leave the country, it was just up and up. And they would say all the time, it's the weather. It's bad conditions in Ukraine. US doesn't help us. European Union doesn't help. They would say anything they want, but they won't say it's their fault. And what they did also was the fact that they never put any money into the public, into the people that work in the public services, into the medicine, into healthcare, into education, which means these fields started to be more and more corrupted. So when you go to the hospital, actually you work the whole year, you pay for your insurance, but then when you go to the hospital, they will say, you can have this operation for this amount and you will be a good one, or you can have this one for your health insurance, but you will be, we'll see how it will be. It might not be very good. So even if you pay for your insurance, you don't know how your life will turn, And again, in education, if you want your child to have good grades, because good grades means you can get into university later, you have to pay for that. Each exam costs money. And again, students have to pay for each exams a few hundred of euros for each exam. Of course, when they finish universities, they want this money back. So when you go to the hospital, everything is corrupted. So they haven't done anything actually to put more efforts into slowing down all this corruption process. They just made it worse and worse. And everywhere you go now, you have to pay, even though it's your right and you don't have to, but you have to pay. So our government, this is exactly how it looks like. They don't put any efforts into making the situation better. They put their efforts only into making their businesses grow and be more powerful, because this is how you protect everything you have for yourself and your family. And actually, the worst thing what happened, it was in September 2015, last year, when it happened, the biggest thief in the history of Europe, probably. They stole $1 billion from 3 national banks of Moldova. And the funny thing is that they still didn't find who stole this $1 billion. But then this $1 billion is 15% of Moldovians' GDP. That's a big number, which means Moldova right now is very, very close to getting default, because it's a big number. for us. They're still looking for someone who stole this money, but they seems like they disappeared. Like 1 billion is like $10. They just disappeared and no one knows where they are. Anyway, so since then, people are coming in the streets and they're protesting almost all weekends. From last year in September, we go on the streets and we protest thousands of people, and still nothing happens yet. There are little changes, but still, they're doing what they want. They feel like they are the ones who can control everything within the country, which is a shame, and it feels strange and wrong. And again, all this situation has such a big impact on the families and on the kids. And actually, the security services has estimated that more than 600 million of people, to 1 million of people from Moldova leave the country, which means 25% of population are working abroad. That's okay, that's good. They send remittances back home. But in the same time, they're taking their families with them. They leave the country. And the worst part about that is that it's not only simple people, because simple people, they just stay at home because they don't have much knowledge. But the most intelligent people of Moldova are leaving, which means doctors, engineers, teachers, the people who could make things happen in Moldova, they prefer living because somewhere else, someone else will give them another job, other opportunities, and they would give them a better life. But again, what immigration means? It means that about 1 from 4 adults work abroad. No, it's 40% of Moldovan GDP, I said, but again, 1 from 5 children, like in Moldova in general, are affected by migration labor. That's a big number, which means we have about 4,000 kids in state-run institutions, which we call orphanages, plus about 4,000 or 5,000 that are living in the foster care systems. Again, that's a very, very big number for a small country like that. And but having $155 per month income, of course, medicine or education, that's a luxury. It's not something that people feel that it's my right to have that. They feel that's a luxury. And if I have possibility to go to the hospital, they would. But most of them, they don't. So they stay home when they have these problems. That's why in 2008, I decided when I was old enough to make some changes in the country, I decided to make a few things that would help country and some people would give them a little bit of support. So I registered the charity in 2008 in Great Britain to be able to get more funds, because credibility of an NGO is more on a higher level when the charities are based in more developed countries. And it's together with other 2 girls from the Great Britain that came a few times, and they did some projects in Moldova, and they just loved it. Because in general, Moldova is a nice country with nice culture, with lots of really kind people that love having guests. That's why usually when people are coming in Moldova, they feel welcome. They feel like they would like to do something for this place. So we are supporting vulnerable children by creating long-term solutions for improving their quality of life. And again, as I said, lots of people are asking me, but having so many kids in the orphanages, why you don't adopt them? Why you don't give them in international adoption? It's because 96% of these kids, they have actually their parents. They just can't afford to bring them home. Some of them are abroad, some of them they don't have living conditions, some of them are in the prisons. It's very different situations. They just can't take their kids home. So we have one of our projects are actually in the Republican orphanage, which is just one of a few orphanages that we have in Moldova. And it's a very huge institution with about 200 babies from 0 to 5 years old. Most of the kids are healthy. Most of them are babies. We have only 2 groups that are disabled kids, but the rest are healthy, good kids. In each group, we have 11 groups right now, and each group have about 15 kids. And you would imagine that they have during the day about 4 carers, and during the night only 2. So when we have a home 1 child, sometimes you think, oh, I'm getting crazy with this child. But when you have 15 kids in one group and 2 carers, just can you imagine that? Of course, lots of things happen in these orphanages. Of course, carers having $100 per month, of course, it doesn't make them very happy. That's why in 2008 I started having international volunteers, and I thought this is just an amazing project because people can come and just give some of their time to these little babies because they don't speak any languages still. They are just newborns, some of them, until maybe they start at 3 years old. But until then, you can speak with them in any language. And you can give some of your time and attention. It's free, right? So I just loved having volunteers, and I've hosted more than 800 through the years. And I found it like a great experience for the kids because they can give some individual attention and care, but as well for the volunteers because it's a place that you can't see somewhere else. You can't go somewhere and see so many babies left out in a place like that. But again, orphanages, it's something that has very big impacts on these kids.
Right now,
Just a few of effects that institutionalization bring in the children's lives, and actually, probably lots of you knows that first 3 years of children's life are the most important years in building your personality and for their brain, and none of these kids have to live in the orphanages, especially in the first 3 years of life. And if you would go in these places, you would see it's like 15 of these cottages where they just lay down almost all day. Because 2 carers, they can't hold them. They can't give them individual attention. So most of their time, they stay alone. They don't play. They don't develop their skills. They usually get minimum attention that they need. And 3 months living in an institution and in an orphanage, I said they lose one month of brain development. This is what statistics shows. So it's a bad thing for the kids. Usually, it has such a big impact that usually they get lost in their lives. They lose understanding of what's wrong and right in this life. And actually, what's interesting about the institutions is that first 5 years of their life, they live in these baby orphanages. But then after that, they go in other orphanages that are just for the older kids. And this is a place where you have to fight to survive. Because these institutions have their own rules. This is where the life starts, and this is where they have to make sure that they survive. That's why for us it's very important to be there in these institutions and be around the kids and make sure that we give them a little bit of what we can. And again, statistics shows that kids living in the orphanages, they tend to have early pregnancies. They tend to have bad lives, to get into drugs, alcohol, and lots of other things that are not good for them because they don't know what's wrong or right. They don't know how to make money. Institutions don't show them how to live, how to cook. They give them, but they don't know what's life. There is another institution called Orhei Boys Institution, which is the same orphanage just for boys. And actually, this is a very old institution. It's from Soviet Union. It's a huge building with 218 boys. All of them are disabled, physical and mentally disabled. For me, when I went there first time, it was really, really difficult to come back there again. It's a very sad place where you can see just a huge number of disabled boys. They don't even mix them with the girls because they're afraid of things, so they don't make kids because physically some of them are good. It's a very sad place to be. But in the same time, when you keep going there, you just get so much love from them, and you get so many smiles and so much unconditioned love that you just love coming back after a while. The problem is that they don't really have any developing activities. Most of their times they lay in beds because, again, they have only 2 carers with 15 boys in the group, and they're all, as you can see this picture, they're laying down. They don't have time to do some extra activities with them. That's why I love coming back there with my volunteers, so we can at least take them out for a walk, where we can smile together, where we can see something together, a video, play, because there is hundreds of activities we can do with these kids, but we need to have people for that. But the most, what I like in the projects that we do is giving support to the poor families. Because if you give support to these families, none of the other things that I said before would happen, institutionalization of the kids. Because families, they want to have their kids. It's a minimum number of the parents that say, no, I don't want my child back. They just don't know what to do with them when they have no food to feed their kids. So they prefer putting them in an institution that would give them some kind of food and care, rather than seeing them starving at home. That's why giving them a little bit of support, you feel like you're doing a little bit of change in their life, and they finally decide to keep their kids at home. Right now, we are supporting 43 poor families every month. When I say supporting, is not only giving them food or sanitary items or access to medicine. It's giving them emotional care. It's giving them support when they need. And when they need it, they would call me or my colleagues, and they would say, look, I'm in this situation, I don't know what to do. And they'll just ask you for some advices. They don't need all the time something from you like money. We never give actually money, but they just need your support most of the time. And when they know there is a person who cares about me, they would decide to keep their kids at home. This is just a few pictures of our families and of the kids that we are working with. But again, what's most important in this project is to give them a hope that tomorrow might be better, and to show them different examples of other families that was in the same situation, but they managed to become better, to change their lives. And actually the most important for us is to give them a little bit of happiness and bring them good memories and good happy moments. That's why we have this summer and the winter projects, when we just organize different activities for our kids. We play with them. We take them to the cinema. We take them to the pizza place, which is something they've never been before. We bring Santa Claus to them. We bring volunteers that can interact with them, because our culture says that kids have to play with the kids. Adults don't play with the kids. And this is a new experience for them, to play with adults, and they love it. That's why they love having volunteers around. And we just love going there. When we take them to the swimming pool, I remember last summer we brought the disabled boys at the aqua park in Chisinau, and people were terrified, because in Soviet Union, people would say, disabled people are not part of the society. You have to hide them somewhere so no one can see them. And even now, roads are not good for disabled people. You can't go with a wheelchair and walk through the streets. It's not possible. It's not adopted. So when we take them in these public places, people are terrified. They're thinking, what's wrong with all of these people? Where they took them from? So they know they are somewhere, but people don't see them usually. So we're trying to take them out, to integrate them in the society, so people can understand that they exist. It's not like we read somewhere and there are disabled people, and they just stare at us most of the time, like, what's wrong? Like, where these kids are coming from? They're afraid. Sometimes they take their kids out of the swimming pool, which is okay with us. They have to learn that they have to integrate these kids because they are part of our society. It's not their fault that they were born like that. So I love this project, but also I love community projects, because this is when volunteers would come and they would interact with the families during the 10 days, for example, and we would repair their houses, very damaged houses. We'll make their living conditions better. We will bring good experiences to the families, interacting with the international volunteers, as well as vice versa. It's just amazing to see how these relations are building up between them and how close they become just after 10 days, and how these volunteers love coming back and keep helping them and being in their lives. And vice versa. These families are asking all the time, oh, how is Sarah? I haven't seen her for a very long time. So I would like to show you just a little video. I told you a little bit about our projects, but it'll be easier probably for you to see it on the video. Yeah, that's a little bit about us, but you should know that none of this would happen, of course, without volunteers, but you have to work with the government. You have to do lots of lobby and advocacy with the local authorities, because this is how things actually make work. Going just as a charity and trying to work just with one or a couple of families is not a big change. That's why you have to work on a governmental level, bring them good experiences, show them this is the way how other people are doing, or other nations are doing, or other organizations are doing, showing them, doing lots of lobby and advocacy. I was working maybe for the last 8 years, implementing a couple of laws in Moldova. It's hard working with them, but changes are making. There are happening good things. Again, mostly with the civil society money and civil society's efforts, but things are happening. And I do believe in a couple of years, little bit will change the situation and people will have a better future and a better life. And usually in this kind of audiences, I say that it doesn't matter how much you do for other people and where you go and how you help other people. Your neighbors or people in Siberia or in Poland or Serbia or Moldova, what matters actually is how much love you put into what you are doing, because all together we can make changes in the societies that we live. And I do believe all together we can make changes. And if you are around in Moldova, you're welcome to come, and I can show you the country and how nice it is. Thank you very much.
The oligarchs of Russia seized the property of the USSR when it collapsed. Who owns the public properties of Moldova since the dissolution of the USSR?
Well, that's a very good question, though. Lots of things were bought by politicians, by businessmen. So lots of, for example, I would give you just a very simple example. Airport was bought last year by a politician that is a businessman, and he owns it. And it was a national building, national business. It would bring incomes to the country, and they sold it. Lots of things were sold and were bought by politicians and businessmen.
They want you to explain kind of your commitment to the project, and what is the government committed to the program, and how long do you think it will be able to go on?
The project?
The project.
Well, I'm working with the government right from the beginning because I understand big changes can be made just by the charity. That's why you have to partnership with them. I'm working mostly with the Ministry of Youth because they're very, very open to help, and I was working with them in implementing the volunteering law in Moldova, which was a very important step for the youth that are getting involved in volunteering activities. And also I'm working mostly with the Ministry of Education and Social Protection, because these are the ministries that are giving or they are saying yes or no to the projects, and then with their yes or no you can go in the communities and implement their projects. They are open. Once you bring the money, they don't have to put anything into the projects. They don't say no, they're open.
And this one's a little bit more about specifics. How did you get started in developing the Moldova Project? The actual mechanics of starting such an amazing program, especially at such a young age. So.
Well, I think since 1992, when there was a war in my place, in my city, I was so upset about people's situation and how things changed for different families in their lives, especially my own life, because we were a good family, and then after the war we became a poor family. That's why, and I've seen lots of suffering families around, and I was thinking, why there is no one to help them? Why there is no government, there is no other institutions to be able to put some efforts into helping these people that are in temporarily need. That's why since then I decided that when I grow up, I'm gonna do something that will help other people. And when I actually finished the school and I came in Chisinau in the capital to study in the university, right from the 1st of September, when was my first lesson, I decided to volunteer. And actually, I started volunteering into an elderly center at the beginning because we still have lots of them. And I don't know, I have just a very good attitude for these people, and I just love them. And I started going at the elderly center, and it was great for me. It was a good experience because lots of these people are intelligent people. They just lost their houses due to different reasons. Again, because of what happened with the Soviet Union and lots of this kind of things. And then I started volunteering into an orphanage with the babies, and then another orphanage. And then I started doing lots of trainings, participating in seminars, and I was getting involved in lots of other activities just to find myself which path would be better for me and where I can put much more work than other people can, where I can be different than other people. And I was getting involved in hundreds of projects. But then one day I decided, okay, I have enough experience. And 2008 was when I decided that I'm going to do this charity. And especially that I had these two girls from the UK that wanted to help me. And this is how we set up the charity. And I wasn't afraid to make it happen because I knew this charity will make lots of changes in somebody's lives. And I really like interacting individually with each member of my families that we are working with. I call them my families because I feel like they are our families. And I feel like we are making changes individually for each family as well as nationally because we work on a national level in lots of communities. Long answer. Sorry.
You speak of working with 43 families. Does the Moldova Project coordinate with other projects? Is there a national overseeing group? And are there comparable local groups like the Moldova Project elsewhere or in your community?
Mm-hmm. Actually, this is a pretty new project and experience for Moldova. I don't know many other charities that are doing the same projects as us, and believe me, I have already more than 100 of requests from different other families that are on the waiting list that are waiting to get supported. But how we work with them, we are trying to make really big changes in their lives. That's why I don't bet on numbers, but on the quality of what we're doing. And how it works usually is my colleagues in the UK are helping mostly with the fundraising, and we would find people or organizations or charities or companies in other countries that would like to sponsor a family in Moldova. And every month they would send monies that would be divided between the families, and they would get this support every month. So it's, I don't know if I answered the question. I think.
Is there a national overseeing group or?
There are lots of coalitions and that are working in Moldova in some kind of fields. For example, in child protection, I'm mostly in these areas of child protection and volunteering. And as a charity, we are part of other coalitions that are working mostly on big levels, like implementing laws or doing lots of lobby and advocacy. But on this specific project, no.
These last couple of questions deal more with the country. So this is a question. What would be your choice, a stable dictatorship or chaotic democracy?
It's democracy, 100%.
And this is more towards the population. Is there a Roma population in Moldova and?
Tsigan?
Yes.
Yes, we do have them. They are based mostly in Soroka, which is north of Moldova. But they live with their lives, and they don't really get much involved into other things that are happening in Moldova. They're just happy with what they're doing, and we're trying to get them involved with the things. But there is one thing that is very specific for Roma families. They don't leave their kids mostly. Some of them do, but their family values are so different than what happens in other families that they're helping each other somehow. And it's just their community that they live all together and they don't interact much with us. And yeah, we have them, but it's not such a big number like in Romania, if you meant that.
Well, unfortunately, we now must conclude our program. And on behalf of the Iowa City Foreign Relations Council, I give a big thank you to Victoria Morozov for her presentation. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, the University of Iowa's International Programs, the University of Iowa's Honors Program, and the Stanley U of I Foundation Support Organization for the generous support. And also we thank today's financial sponsors, Midwest One Bank and Mike Margolin, and we thank City Channel 4 for making our programs available for viewing. And Victoria, I have to tell you, you had me impressed with that you learned English without any lessons, and you speak beautifully. But this was extremely inspiring. So as a small token of our appreciation, we present you with the coveted Iowa City Foreign Relations Council mug.
That's really nice.
And I just want to say thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for all the work you're doing. It's amazing and wonderful work. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us, and we are adjourned.